Welcome to the Strand. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Christina Foxley, the Director of Events, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to NYU's American Scholar of Russian Studies, Professor Stephen F. Cohen, and the nation's Katrina vanden Heuvel. Professor Cohen has written several books, including Rethinking the Soviet Experience, Politics and History since 1917. He is a contributing editor for The Nation and is a CBS News consultant as well as a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. Professor Cohen's latest book, Soviet Fates and Lost Alternatives, From Stalinism to the New Cold War, presents a radically new approach for achieving a necessary partnership with today's Russia. Professor Cohen is joined by Katrina vanden Heuvel, who is the editor and publisher of The Nation. Ms. vanden Heuvel is a frequent commentator on American and international politics on MSNBC, CNN, PBS, and ABC, among many other programs. Her articles have appeared in the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, New York Times, and Boston Globe. Following their discussion, we'll pass around a microphone. Please wait for that before you ask your questions. And then Professor Cohen would be happy to sign his book for you, which you can purchase downstairs on your way out of the store. Let's please give a warm welcome to Stephen F. Cohen and Katrina vanden Heuvel.
Christina, thank you. Full disclosure, Stephen F. Cohen is my husband. It may seem unusual to do an event, a conversation with your husband. Already see a lot of him. But he's also a longtime Nation contributor, as Christina mentioned, former Nation columnist, and perhaps most relevant for this evening, key parts of the book appeared in different forms in The Nation, including an essay, The New American Cold War, which was one of our best-selling covers. But Steve has been, as they say in Russia, my Sputnik, my fellow traveler, or I have been his fellow traveler for many decades on the front lines of things Russian. And we had the good fortune in editing a book, Gorbachev's Voices of Glasnost, Interviews with Gorbachev's Reformers, to spend some extraordinary years in Moscow from 1985 to 1989. He is also an alternativism, which is, if I have an ism, alternativism, a believer that there are always alternatives in history and politics, and that has animated his work. And I say that because we're going to divide up this evening, and I'm going to say a few words about Obama's domestic agenda, because there is always a connection between the fate of domestic agenda and a foreign agenda, and at the forefront of the foreign agenda is U.S.-Russian relations, the reset. So let me say a few words about that. Just before I move into that, I just want to say, since it's a night largely devoted to Russia, I'd like to pay tribute to Natalia Estemirova, the courageous human rights activist who was assassinated in Ingushetia the other day. She was someone I met, I believe Steve met, and she was a colleague of someone we knew a little, Anna Politkovskaya, a crusading investigative journalist who worked for a newspaper, the leading opposition newspaper in Russia, Novaya Gazeta. Obama gave his interview to that paper on the eve of the summit, and it is a paper we feel a close affinity with, too, because of its fearless editor. It's a tough profession. And Natalia Estemirova was also a contributor to The Nation. So President Obama has been in office 6 months. Yesterday was the 6-month marker. And he took office at a time, I think all of us would agree, a time defined by hope and fear and great expectations. Many good steps have been taken, and it is staggering to consider the enormous challenges Obama confronts, has confronted, must confront. Some of those inherited from his predecessor, arguably the worst president ever. But we're moving into a period where the challenge is some of these will become Obama's economy, Obama's war. These remain perilous times. There are glimmers of good news. You may have heard today that a chip, sort of the military-industrial complex took a hit. Some funding was denied for this useless, wasteful F-22. This is a good sign. But I believe Obama's presidency is going to be judged by whether he can revive the real economy. And that doesn't mean saving bankers' bonuses and their hides. It means a laser-like focus on creating jobs, jobs, more jobs, and laying the foundation for a new, more just, sustainable economy. We've come out of a period where so many Americans have lived in this 30, 40-year conservative paradigm. So you have all of this alarmist and demagogic rhetoric about deficits and debt. And what needs to be understood, and it's hard because we got a media which is not moved with the politics of this country, it seems to me, which is more center progressive country than the center right. But you have a country where if the government, if businesses aren't investing, banks certainly aren't lending. They're using the money to buy other banks and invest in their other investments. Consumers aren't spending, and businesses aren't investing. Government is the last resort. And that's important to understand if we want to avert a greater recession. So today we face two big challenges. One is how do you really move, if not a second recovery package, which however small and too filled with tax cuts was critical. And the Republicans who gretch and whine and the conservative Democrats about how it was wasteful and didn't do anything are crazy. It is saving people in terms of unemployment compensation. It's saving some jobs, but we still need a targeted jobs program. Double-digit unemployment has overtaken the size of that recovery program. If you can't get a second stimulus because of the politics of the time, it's time for a jobs program, and through the federal government, not through the states, which is holding up a lot, though you need to save some of these failed states. We have failed states around the world. We have failed states. One of them is now California and others. But it is important to remember, and it gets too confused with the bank bailouts, that Obama has, with a progressive budget, broken with 30 years of ill-conceived dogma about deficit reduction at all costs. The danger, as I see it moving forward, is that as these, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan post record profits and start doing bonuses again, and people look at double-digit unemployment, it's a very corrosive, political, painful economic atmosphere in which right-wing populism, in which anger and despair emerge. And the Republicans are feeding on it, and they will do anything, and this is the next fundamental fight ahead, the health care reform. Today, Bill Kristol, who has been a blight on our political scene for more than 3 decades, is trying for the second time to kill health care reform. He has said, quote, literally written in his blog, go for the kill. You got another senator from South Carolina, a confused state, where, he's saying, Obama, this is, let's take him down, this is his Waterloo. They know that if Obama can achieve fundamental, real health care reform with a public plan, single player, fight for later, that he will have done what has eluded many presidents and will do something fundamental, not just in terms of passing legislation, but in terms of showing people that government can actually improve the conditions of people's lives, so that government isn't an abstraction. And that's why they're fighting. And they're going to amass all their forces, and you got lobbyists spending $1.4 million a day. So the power of progressives mobilizing is there are various groups, you may know about them, Healthcare for America Now. Howard Dean is playing a great role with Democracy for America to really fight the power of organized money with organized people. We got majorities behind this public plan, and Obama has reserved his political capital, is now stepping up. Will it be too late? I don't know, but if they leave Washington without legislation, everyone should be hounding their congresspeople during the recess.